Welcome back to another episode of Sound Pals Go to the Movies. This is another Throwback Thursday review, and I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hi, guys.
And today we're going to be reviewing Dogma. And just fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. An abortion clinic worker with a special heritage is called upon to save the existence of humanity from being negated by two renegade angels trying to exploit a loophole and re-enter heaven. Let's start off with my first pro, the cast. We have Kevin Smith, Jason Mewes, Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Linda Fiorentino, Jason Lee, Salma Hayek, and Alan Rickman. And comedian George Carlin, and Chris Rock, and even Alanis Morissette playing God. And also the cast from Clerks, the movie. They come out in other roles. There are big names associated with this movie, but that's not what I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to say that these actors had chemistry between themselves. Examples such as Ben Affleck with Matt Damon, Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes, Salma Hayek and Chris Rock, and so on. Especially Alan Rickman, who does an amazing job as Metatron in this movie. But also, once these actors share the screen with others, they don't outshine the other talents. Yes, there are some exceptions to this, but not enough to ruin the movie. The lines that are delivered between characters flow well, and I believe it's due to my next point, which is the script, which is well written so that when lines are delivered between actors, it seems to flow well. The script reminds me of a Quentin Tarantino movie such as Pulp Fiction. For example, one of the scenes with Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta from Pulp Fiction seems to relate to this movie, in which it seems not to let down but keep us listening and intrigued as the conversation keeps going and the dialogue proceeds. So in this movie, it seems like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon have the same chemistry as John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson from Pulp Fiction, and that is due to the script. I actually think that this movie ranks high as one of the best movies that Kevin Smith has directed, and it seems that there's a personal connection between the script and the topic of religion that's close to him. Now moving on to my next point, the connection between the script and the topic of religion, how it makes one take a step back and question what is written in the Bible. It just makes one ponder but not disrespect the idea of religion or nor the people who practice said religion. It makes a point about how much belief people have in the book that was written long ago, and they don't even question what is said in the book. Alongside mentioning Metatron, the voice of God, Bartleby, Loki, Asrath, and even the embodiment of serendipity, and not just what most people read in the book when they quickly skim the Bible. And I also feel that Kevin Smith is not really trying to bring down religion since he labels himself as a Catholic. Next, how they added comedy into the mix by adding Rufus the 13th Apostle, played by Chris Rock, and commenting on the reason that he is not in the Bible, that is basically due to him being black, and also saying that Jesus was black, which if Jesus did exist, he would have been black according to anthropologists and other scientific evidence in the present time. So the joke is that since in early times all illustrations of Jesus have painted him to be a white male, and Rufus says that is not true because he knew him personally. It works because it's comical and it's sort of true. And in the end, when Bethany says God is a woman, and Rufus then comments, well, God isn't male nor female. This makes us ponder that if a supreme being that created life could possibly not label himself as male or female, that is a real genuine possibility to think outside the box. Along with Loki making references to Lewis Carroll through the looking glass, claiming that it's a criticism of organized religion, and gives examples such as the walrus and the carpenter story. This is another point that works well with comedy. Since Loki has met God personally, he still tells humans to question religion with these examples. Examples like this makes this movie more than simple jokes, but it also still has some low-hanging jokes such as sex jokes, angels having no sexual anatomy, and even poop jokes. But it still has some serious scenes. My top 3 scenes in the movie that show this example are Bethany meeting Metatron and telling him where was God when she couldn't bear children, then that's the reason why her husband left her. That scene felt strong for Bethany's character that made me want to know more about her past and get to know her character more. Next scene, when Bartleby and Loki have been just thrown out of the train, and Bartleby gives a speech to Loki why God has more compassion and forgiveness towards humans versus angels. This is a strong message for even those who have lost their faith, just knowing God gave humans more rights and freedom than the higher beings he created, such as angels. This makes you think how God favors more humans than other creations that he has made. My last favorite scene is when Bethany is on the lake saying that this task is too much for her and she can't bear with it, to which Metatron appears and tells her to imagine when he delivered the message to Jesus that he had to be the savior of humans, and that meant he would have to spread the word of God and eventually die for the sins of man. All these scenes have serious tones and big impact on the viewers, but don't really shove religion in our faces. Now, moving on to my cons. First up, Jason Mewes and his battle with heroin during the movie. This is shown in the movie since they didn't edit some of the takes or reshoot some of them, such as the scene close to the end in the bar where Asrath has them captive and he begins to lecture them. We can see Jason Mewes going from being awake to other scenes where he's asleep in different shots of the movie. Instead of waking him up and reshooting the scene, Kevin Smith left him in, but then there's a positive take to this. After the filming of this movie, Kevin spoke to Jason and told him that he had to clean up his act or he would have to to cut ties with him. So Jason did decide he wanted to clean up, but he wanted Kevin to help him. And Kevin did help him, and now Jason has been clean for a long time, and Kevin is still by his side as his best friend. But yeah, not reshooting the scenes does take viewers out of the film, so that's in my con. Next con would have to be the length of the film. For a movie with a simple straight line story, it didn't need to be that long. We could have done without some scenes that just went on for a little bit too long, and by taking these out, I'm pretty sure the film could have been 30 minutes shorter or so. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to my friend Touly to see how he saw this movie and what grade he gave this movie.
As far as the actors and actresses in the movie, as Sal mentioned, the star power is there. Whether some of these individuals were already on their way to becoming superstars or were kind of already known within the industry. So at the very least, just having these folks in the movie helped drive viewership, I would say, and gives us a glimpse as to how their presence kind of shined in the movie given the sort of character they were playing. The story itself, I wouldn't necessarily say it's anything special in the sense of how our leading character, Bethany, played by Linda Fiorentino, following her around with all of these other individuals trying to aid her or getting in the way of her completing her task in order to save the universe. And this is me coming from the perspective of, let's sort of strip out the religious aspect and just treat it as a narrative where this person has this mission in order to stop these two individuals from re-entering a certain place in order to save the world. Trying to look at it from that perspective, it's a pretty common theme when it comes to good versus evil, trying to prevent the bad guy from winning. Again, trying not to look at it from a religious perspective. So that I'm kind of like trying to look at it from like a neutral point of view, because I feel like when I introduce religion now into my review, because the movie does, as Sal mentioned, talk about a lot of points about why this is within this, realm of this area of religion versus that. That brings more up for discussion and debate, which is all fine and stuff. But for me, that's like a component that I didn't really look too heavily into, just because I feel like the characters in the film sort of got in the way of that message alongside the vibe that I was getting. This movie, I felt like, was weighted more towards like being a comedy versus a movie that I should treat seriously. Even like at the beginning of the film, when they gave us those words to sort of abide by while experiencing this film, I was like, okay, I shouldn't treat this film too seriously. And I thought the characters, although they did a great job of portraying the sort of personality or figure that they were supposed to based on religion, I felt like it really overshadowed a lot of the serious tone that I might have preferred if they brought it up so that by the time Bethany's character sort of get to the end, I would feel like motivated to be behind her and root for her, because she did mention stuff that I found interesting that if the film could have tackled in such a way that questions religion in the way that she kind of did, from the stance of where she worked and the sort of things she has to deal with whenever she goes to work, how she mentioned where was the help that she sort of would have wanted years ago when she felt she was in need of help, times where she felt vulnerable or pain, but there wasn't a certain presence there to sort of guide her. Things that were talked about, but some of these things, if they have come into fruition on screen instead, even if it's not through Bethany's experience, but or her to have witnessed it among the public or other people, seeing like how other people are struggling in this manner, and that sort of questions how she or the individuals who are around her, because they are supposedly they're more in tune with religion based on their characters, that they could give insight to Bethany so that she can come to like some sort of acceptance or whatever it may be towards the end of the movie that ultimately gives like a sort of resolution or payoff or some sort of revelation that I would say, you know what, Bethany has really gone through this transformation and can accept what happened in the past, or kind of see maybe how things could change, or just how she just kind of have a different outlook on life based on some of the examples that they're showing us versus just telling us. Again, part of the reason that sort of, at least to me, became a background sort of thing is because the characters in this movie and the people who play them, like their personalities are very, very strong. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because with those strong personalities, they do bring about, the sort of comedy, not necessarily the lightheartedness, but more like the sort of tone that, again, not as serious as I should treat the sort of things that they're talking about, even though the things that they talk about are very delicate topics. To me, at least, it felt like there was this struggle between trying to have this balance of being comedic at times, but trying not to waver too far away from the sort of things that we're saying about religion. But I feel like the comedy side was just too overpowering for me to get along with maybe the messages that we're trying to say. I understood the messages that we're trying to get across, but I feel like if there were more serious situations where, again, because Bethany's our leading character here, that through her eyes and how she reacted to certain things that she came across along this journey, from seeing what she went through or experienced or saw, I felt like she was probably the character who didn't fall into this comedy sort of personality, that she was more of the person who was on the side of reason because she had experienced stuff in the past that, like I said earlier, that drove her to be the sort of person who she is today, that would lead her to like question stuff about religion. So I think had they just been a little more serious at times, not serious all the time, of course, but a little more serious at certain times where the struggle that Bethany went through wasn't more often than not just trying to cope with these people who were around her. I felt like that was more of a struggle to her versus her witnessing stuff to the people living in this world, like her friends or her family members or her neighbors. Rather than seeing stuff happen to them, I felt like a lot of her struggle throughout the movie was just having to deal with these very strong personalities. Again, it doesn't, at least to me, help guide me to a place where I felt, you know what, Bethany has gone through a lot and I feel for her and I want her to be okay at the end. I mean, she is the leading character, so maybe in a way I'm supposed to feel that way, but I don't think I was really convinced. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Again, based on the people who were in it and the sort of direction they were taking in terms of it not being serious and all, I think it did its job in that light and trying to relay messages about religion and the sort of inconsistencies, the sort of things that we misinterpret just given the status quo or things that we have come across. Like I said earlier, have they just taken the gas off the comedy stuff a little bit and just sort of filled it with moments that was a little more serious tone? Because to be honest, my favorite scene from the movie was when Bethany was talking to Ben Affleck's character, or how she was talking about how she felt about religion and the sort of hypocrisies or inconsistencies they are, and how in the end things doesn't matter, how things would disprove one another if this happened, in which in a way got to Ben Affleck's character as well. Like it felt like her words got through to him in some degree, and I felt like to me a conversation like that was very powerful. And if the film just did a little more of that, then I would have thought, this film, although at the forefront to me it's more of a comedic approach to talking about religion, if they had a couple more moments like that, I think the balance to me would have been better. I'm not asking for like a 50-50 sort of balance thing, but if they have done something like a 70-30 ratio, which then I feel like in terms of the pacing of the film, because it was over 2 hours long, some of it, I thought the introductions to some of these characters did go on for a little bit, because I think maybe the film was just trying to get viewers to understand who these characters were and how they sort of fit into this grand scheme of the story, and how they would either aid or be a resistance to Bethany's journey. Well, I thought like some of these conversations just went on for a little bit too long, versus moments where maybe they could have just been a little more brief and then maybe foreshadow or leave us with some sort of anticipation for that conversation to happen later when enough events have transpired in between to have that next conversation. I think they wanted to really put everything on the table first whenever Bethany came across these characters, and then it's like, okay, let's get back to the story. I thought that might have contributed to why the movie was a little longer than maybe I would have wanted it. Maybe like an hour and 45, an hour and 50 minutes would have been more preferred in my book. Overall, I thought the movie was okay. Probably not as high up there as Sal is, but it's kind of how I saw it, and so I'm going to give the movie a 5.5 out of 10.
So I also agree with Touly that Bethany's character needed more development because she was a major character versus the supporting characters in the movie, but we just got hints of how she lost her faith, never really explained how she got to that point or what made her tick. Maybe they should have had cut some scenes shorter in the movie and made scenes with her explaining why she lost her faith, how she lost her marriage, how she lost a family member or so, or even the idea of her life not going the way she planned it to be. So I guess with that, my final grade for this movie is a 7 out of 10. I highly recommend it to people who want to enjoy a movie about religion and also a little bit comedy in there that reminds them of a Mel Brooks movie. So I guess that does it for this review of Dogma. Please join us next time when we're going to review Backdraft.
It's a living thing, Brian. It breathes, it eats, and it hates.
Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find our social media links below. And like always, keep watching movies.